Thank you, and it's a great privilege to be here and to make this special announcement. My announcement tonight covers a few topics, a few very exciting topics that we've been working on for a very long time. I'll firstly start off with our classroom in Vanuatu. $500 has been donated and another $1,000 has been acquired. That's a very exciting achievement. We are going ahead with the project of 2 classrooms, 1 office and 1 toilet by December 2014, starting construction before Christmas this year. Our project team will consist of local village people, myself, a civil engineer that I've sought advice from, and we will visit there in about November. But my colleagues and volunteer friends will be going over to start those conversations in August. I thank them for their wonderful contribution in assisting me, and I thank the people that have donated the money, the people that have given us advice, and the village people who will play a very big part of this project. I've spoken to the High Commission and to the government, and things are well on their way. I won't speak about that matter any further. I will talk about our recent trips to Asia, which involved a visit to Malaysia and a visit to Brunei. We established an organisation that now covers all of Asia and the Pacific for Heritage Railways. That is a remarkable achievement because it means that the stories of the past will continue for those areas that have not received assistance in Heritage Railways like Australia and the Western world. Volunteer railways that have been isolated and still being affected by the same issues. At that conference, I had 9 nations sign up to be a part of our organisation. I will visit Myanmar in 2014 as Myanmar comes from a communist country into the democracy. As they open up their tourism sector, I now have access, thanks to my tour guide in Myanmar, to try and get the last preserved steam railway part of our organisation so it receives assistance. It's those types of stories that make it very special to me, and it means a great deal because it means that people that have not ever received help are now receiving help and will receive more help in the future. And it is an absolute privilege to be the Secretary and Treasurer for that international organisation. And I commit that my first task will be to liaise with the Asian Development Bank to try and get insurance for railways that are affected by disaster. It doesn't just happen in Australia. People such as Malaysia, Indonesia, the Philippines, Taiwan, Japan, Myanmar, China, and many more are affected by disaster each year. There is one railway in Taiwan that has not opened for 5 years, and it is a government-owned railway because of the extent of the disaster. But we are working with them to get their railway open. I'll now talk about very exciting news. I've received advice from the Office of the Non-Profit Sector, from the Prime Minister and Cabinet, that Gold Coast will host the World Conference on Volunteering, and that's exciting. And I anticipate on presenting to represent Australia at that conference. Tonight I also announced that I've received a letter from the Minister, the Queensland Minister for Energy and Water Supply. The Minister has informed me that he is about to release a draft 30-year energy and 30-year water strategy, and he has asked that I provide feedback in the form of a submission to a parliamentary committee about policy ideas that can shape energy and water supply. Of course, energy and water are not my expertise, and I'll be relying on the consultation of varied stakeholders. However, my expertise are in education and policy, and that's where I will be delivering, is in those policy, creative and outside-the-box thinking to make sure that we can problem solve for the future. I also announced this evening that I have established Social Impact Bonds Australia. Social Impact Bonds Australia is a new national organisation based here in Canberra. However, it is not a centralised process, it is decentralised, and the Council represents all of Australia. Social Impact Bonds Australia does not look only at social bonds but social financing across the social enterprise sector to try and bring stakeholders together, look at reform policy ideas that government, particularly the Department of Education, Employment and Workplace Relations, DEWA, can take to the future. looking at how the inclusion of local government in the Constitution, what that means for social enterprise, what it means for research opportunities, and how we can look at what happens overseas and to support research overseas. The very exciting intellectual property, the ideas that we've come up with, which are about to shape my generation, probably for the rest of my life. Some very intuitive ideas that we have come up with have had to be protected as design patents, and so I cannot talk about those this evening. But I can tell you that we are seeking council members, and if you are interested, I strongly encourage you to apply. I will have those application forms available as of next week in the local newspaper and in online job advertisements. And I strongly encourage people to think about messages that I'm trying to send to you in between the lines that I can't talk about, because this means something very important for Australia. I do believe we've covered everything tonight. I'll now answer your questions. We'll start at the front of the room and we'll move around the back, so you can go first. Well, I'm not going to talk about politics. It's very late in the evening, and I think we've all got a lot more things that we want to talk about than politics, don't you? Next question. Yes, so the two countries we visited were Malaysia and Brunei. Brunei was simply a day stopover. The conference happened in Malaysia. That was in the city of Kota Kinabalu, which is in the eastern state of Sabah. While we're talking about the eastern state of Sabah, we did come up with a community development project after talking to some journalists there, that we can look at taking women's magazines, surpluses of those that have already been read and used, and take those using a volunteer management system into promoting women's leadership and creating artistic shopping bags for the general populace of Kota Kinabalu, which is a capital city, to use. That's very important.